Hello friends, before we head out on today's journey, I've got something for you. If you've ever wanted to feel more comfortable outside, whether you're hiking the new trail, identifying birds by sound, or simply reconnecting with nature in a deeper way, I've created something just for you. My online classes at the Nature Wander are designed to take you from curious to confident, step by step. I'm not going to overwhelm you, just give you practical skills you can actually use out there in the wild. From beginner birding to navigation to seasonal outdoor safety, these are the skills that turn a walk in the woods into something unforgettable. You can check them out anytime at thenaturewander.com/course. Just check the show notes for a link to the courses and build that confidence for when you're outdoors. Now let's get back outside. Hello friends, and welcome to the Nature Wander. I'm Paul, your host, and I got a question for you today. Just a real simple question. What's the difference between a hill and a mountain? Do you know? Can you answer with confidence? I don't know. A lot of people are a little bit confused when it comes to that question. Well, that's kind of what I want to talk about today. The difference between a hill and a mountain. Oh, we're going to get into more than that. Yeah, we'll get into much more. I mean, is a lake different than a pond? Maybe a lake's just a really big pond. Is a stream simply a small river? And where on earth does a creek fit in there? Puzzling, isn't it? Is a bush just a short tree? Or is a tree just a very tall bush? Or are they the same thing and people just call them differently? I mean, I've always had in my mind different classifications, definitions, I guess, of what these things are. But the reality is that many of the distinctions that we use in nature, they can be surprisingly fuzzy. Nature doesn't always follow our labels. So we're the ones who put these labels on things. Nature doesn't care about the labels. And this is what we're going to discuss today. Do our labels really matter? Does size really matter? Yeah, so that's what we're going to talk about today. So lace up your boots and let's head out into nature. So I'd like to start out today by talking about the difference between a mountain and a hill. Now, I know where I used to live down in the southern part of New York State, southwestern New York. I used to live in an area that they used to call the Enchanted Mountains. Yet every time I'm driving around in that area, it's like, well, are these really mountains? To me, they were hills. But they called them the Enchanted Mountains. So what makes a mountain a mountain? What distinctive properties does it have to steer it away from the name hill? I mean, many people think it's, if I asked you right now and you could answer, you'd probably say height. And that's what many people think. It's the height. Well, geologists and the dictionaries often classify an elevation as a mountain if it rises at least 2,000 feet, which is 600 meters, above sea level. Hills are generally below this threshold. So that's what a lot of geologists will classify it as. Now, to me, it's like, okay, above sea level or above the level grade of the ground? You know, it gets a little bit confusing, but they say 2,000 feet above sea level, and hills are under 2,000 feet. So that's your dividing line. Now, I know when I was younger, I was told 1,000 feet. So I'm not sure where that came from, but now I guess they changed it to 2,000, or maybe it's always been 2,000. I was just told the wrong information. Another thing that they classify it by is shape. Mountains usually feature sharp, jagged, highly defined peaks and summits. So it's not like the rolling hills, you know, where it's just gradual. No, mountains have peaks, a summit, yeah, at the very tip top. If you're climbing up a hill, do you know when you're at the top? I don't know, it's kind of a gradual roll to get up there and back down again. So it's kind of like a mound. This is how a lot of the experts define it. So hills, they tend to have that smoother, rounded top. Mountains, sharp, jagged, highly defined peaks and summits. Now, they often use steepness as a characteristic as well to define it. So mountains have a very steep, dramatic incline that often requires specialized climbing gear, whereas hills, they have a gentle, gradual slope that is, well, quite easy to walk up. Also, sometimes they define or use the formation. Mountains are primarily formed by tectonic plate collisions. So as the tectonic plates are moving, that's actually going to help form the mountains. As they crash into each other and there's no place for that rock to go, where does the rock go? It goes up and it forms a mountain. Okay? Or, okay, there's another way to form a mountain, according to the experts, volcanic activity that is pushing the crust upwards. Hills, on the other hand, are more frequently created by winds and water erosion. So, over thousands, maybe millions of years, a mountain could essentially turn into a hill because they're eroded away. Or maybe you have level ground and you have water flowing in the lowest section of that area, and it ends up eating away at the soil, and that erodes away, and what's left is a mount or a hill. So wind, water erosion, or it can be the buildup of sediment and rock debris. So this is how they classify these things. Oh, there's also grouping. Okay, grouping. Mountains are almost always part of a larger interconnected mountain range, whereas hills are frequently found standing alone or scattered across rolling landscapes. So those are the main differences that you classify mountains and hills by. Now, here's the thing. This is where it gets really confusing. Different countries use different standards. So geographic agencies like the USGS, U.S. Geological Survey, they abandoned strict height classifications in the 1970s because they wanted to avoid naming conflicts. Instead, names are heavily influenced by local history and culture. And a good example of this, any of you been to the Black Hills of South Dakota? The Black Hills, if they kept their classifications, okay, they would actually have to call it the Black Mountains of South Dakota because they reach heights of 7,000 feet. But historically, they've always been called the Black Hills. So this is what I mean. It gets a little blurry. So the smallest mountain in the world, look up Mount Waichapoof. It's in Australia. Okay, so it's a mountain. It sits at just 141 feet. 141 feet, 43 meters above the surrounding terrain. Not a very big mountain, in my opinion. To me, that would be a hill, but once again, it goes by the area. So it's historically been called mount, so it's a mountain, even though it doesn't fit the category. Now, like I said, I've always been taught since I was younger that it was 1,000 feet of prominence. So 1,000 feet over the surrounding land. If it's over, that's a mountain. If it's under, it's a hill. But many famous mountains are much lower than that. And some very large hills would qualify as mountains under these guidelines. The key takeaway here, a mountain is often a cultural definition rather than a scientific one. And a hill, same thing. You can have hills and mountains, whatever you want to call it, or whatever the ancestors of that area have called it. So next time you see a mountain, or like the Magic Mountains down in the southern tier of New York State, to me they're hills, but to others they're mountains. So what about lakes, ponds, rivers, or streams? This is actually where the idea of this episode came from. My wife and I were up in Acadia National Park, and we were walking around, and we saw, this pond, as they called it, and I'm like, I'm sorry, this looks like a lake to me. It's huge. Once again, to me, size matters. To me, it was big enough that it should be called a lake, but they called it a pond. At what point does a pond become a lake? Nobody really agrees on this one. Seriously. I did a lot of research trying to find out what's the definition. There's some common ideas, but nobody really agrees. Some of the common ideas are that if sunlight reaches the bottom, okay, so it goes all the way down through the water, that sunlight, and it reaches the bottom, it is a pond. So, in other words, if the sunlight doesn't reach the bottom, it's considered a lake. But others say if waves form, it's a lake. If they don't form, it's a pond. In my opinion, it depends on how heavy the wind is. We've got a pretty good wind today. I bet some of the smaller bodies of water, some of the ponds, are creating little ripples. Are those considered waves? Yeah, hard to say. Another common idea is that if rooted plants can grow throughout, it's a pond. In other words, it's shallow enough even in the middle for the plants to grow. It's a pond. If not, it's a lake. On my old property, I had a half-acre pond. To me, it was a pond. I had a guy come in and excavate. I said, I want a pond. I didn't say, build me a lake. But it was deep enough in the middle that the sunlight didn't reach the bottom of it. And there were no plants in the middle because the sunlight wouldn't reach them there. So to me, that was a pond. But if you go by some of these definitions, it's a lake. So once again, there's no universal standard for this. I mean, some examples of this, everyone knows Henry David Thoreau if you're into nature. Okay. Walden Pond. Walden Pond was 102 feet deep. Shouldn't he have called it Walden Lake at that point? How about Echo Lake in New Hampshire? It covers 14 acres. It's huge, so it's got to be a lake. It's only 11 feet deep at its deepest point. There is vegetation growing throughout the lake. So names often stick mostly because of history, not because of size or depth. Now, river versus stream, is a creek smaller than a stream? Is a stream smaller than a river? This all depends on where you live. Here we go with that gray area again. Different regions use brook, creek, a run, a stream, or a river. And often it's with no formal size standards. Now in science, a stream is not a specific size. It is simply the generic term for any body of water flowing within a bed and banks. A tiny trickle of water through a backyard can be considered a stream. But scientifically, the massive Mississippi River is also a stream. So the stream is kind of the generic term as far as science goes. And the rest, it's all regional. It's all regional. It depends on what people have called it for years and years and years. So the takeaway here is that water doesn't care what we call it. It just depends on where you live. Now another one that has stumped me because I've gotten varying answers when I was younger and learning to be a naturalist, an environmental educator, I got so confused with this one. Trees versus bushes. Yeah, this one really surprises a lot of people. I mean, what makes a tree a tree? Well, the common answer with most people, and this is what I was taught by some naturalists, is it's tall. It's generally thought that under 15 foot, it's a bush. Over, it's a tree. Now with this one, science actually has definitions. Science defines trees generally as having one main woody stem, or what we call the trunk, and taller growth. In other words, much taller. Shrubs generally have multiple stems, and the growth is from near the ground. So in other words, your branches on the tree, they come out much higher up, whereas the branches on a shrub or a bush, they grow shorter. Oh no, I just confused you. Difference between a shrub and a bush. Generally, same thing. It depends regionally on what you want to call it. Then nature comes along and complicates things with all this. You see, serviceberry, it can grow as either. It can be a shrub or a bush by these definitions. Elderberry can be shrub-like or it can be tree-like. And there are some junipers that really blur the line completely. And another twist, the banana tree is actually an herb. And it's the world's tallest shrub. It can look down on a standard backyard tree. That's how tall they get. So some species can sometimes be both a shrub and a tree. Now another one that seems to confuse a lot of people, it did me for quite a while. Many people call every single wet area a swamp. How do you know it's not a marsh or a bog? Yeah, if it's wet and it's got plants growing in it, it's a swamp. If it's wet and it doesn't have plants growing in it, it's a swamp. Yeah, I mean, seriously, I've heard more people call everything a swamp, and that's fine if that's what they want to do. Well, here's the basic differences. A marsh is dominated by grasses, by sedges, and by reeds. It's generally very shallow water, whereas a swamp is dominated by, believe it or not, trees and woody vegetation. Think flooded forests as a swamp. So when you see these movies where they're going through the bayou in a boat, waiting for some monster to come out and grab them, and you see all the trees around them, okay, that would be considered a swamp. But you see some big body of water that's very shallow that just doesn't have any trees, or maybe one tree, or, yeah, and it's got a lot of grasses and sedges and reeds, that would be a marsh. Now, a bog. Okay, a bog is the oddball here. The characteristics of a bog is that they have acidic water. They're nutrient poor. Not much lives in there. There's a lot of peat accumulation in a bog, and they're often fed mostly by rainfall. Plants that live in bogs have adapted to this harsh condition. Yeah, most people don't realize how acidic the water is, and you'll get some very specialized plants in there. I've been to a lot of different bogs, and they're so awesome to study. There's so many interesting plants in there. Now, little fun fact here. You can actually have a bog that's not very swampy at all, and a fen, like a bog, but it's fed by groundwater, making it alkaline and rich in unique mineral-loving plants. So the takeaway here is that wetland names are based more on ecology than appearance. And once again, I have heard some bog swamps and marshes that have been misnamed. When they give it their formal name, the human name, they really are wrong on their classification. Yeah, not always, but I have seen some. So these are some of the more common classifications that we often get wrong. Does it really matter if that's a tree or a bush? Not really. It all depends on where it's located as to what the name has stuck with it. There are some that do have scientific classifications for, but there's no real rule of thumb for any of these. I mean, people have gotten names wrong for so many years. I mean, for example, a jellyfish, it's not a fish. And they don't have any jelly in them. I know, they're kind of like jelly, but yeah, they're not actually a fish. Starfish, they're not a fish either. And mountain goats, I actually saw mountain goats when I was out west, and they're not true goats. Koala bears, they're not bears. And yeah, where I live, Western New York, buffalo, the Buffalo Bills, and they have a buffalo for their Did you know most North American buffalo are actually bison? So when they named the baseball team the Buffalo Bisons, they got it right. They're not buffaloes. Nature is just so full of historical naming mistakes, and they become permanent. Does it matter? Not really. So why do humans love categories? I mean, we love to organize things. We need to organize the world into categories. And that's because they actually help us communicate. They help us to study nature. And they help us to share observations. But nature, it exists on a spectrum. Many boundaries are human-made, not natural-made. The natural world is often messier, which in my opinion makes it more interesting than our labels. So I'd like to close here with a challenge for you. During your next hike or your walk, find something that doesn't fit neatly into a category and ask yourself, is that a pond or a lake? Is it a tree or is it a shrub? Or a bush? Is it a hill or a mountain? Then remember that nature rarely worries about the names that we give it. The boundaries often exist in our minds more than in the landscape itself. I'd like to thank you for wandering with me today. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to follow or subscribe so that you don't miss our next journey. And if you know someone who could use a little more nature in their life, share the podcast with them. Don't forget to visit the show notes for additional information about the Nature Wanderer and this episode. Until next time, get outside. stay curious, and keep exploring the nature around you. Hello, friends. I hope you're out wandering through nature, exploring the natural world around you. Do you enjoy writing about your wanderings? Nature journaling is an awesome, fun way to remember all the adventures you have taken and how you felt during those journeys. If you're looking for some beautiful journals to keep track of all your wanderings, I have several available on Amazon, including some guided journals for children. Start your journey in journaling by clicking on the link in the show notes. Keep exploring the nature around you and keep journaling all your wanderings. Hey there, fellow nature wanderers. If you're like me, you love spending time outdoors, breathing in that fresh air and connecting with the natural world. But at home, have you ever thought about what's in the products you use every single day? That's why I'm excited to share Apple Valley Natural Soap with you. Their handcrafted all-natural soaps are made with organic ingredients, essential oils, and no harsh chemicals. Awesome! So they're not only great for your skin, but they're safe for the planet. And they don't just stop at soap. Apple Valley Natural Soap also carries a full line of natural skincare products, including shampoos, body butters, facial bars, and more. All designed to nourish your skin without synthetic ingredients. You can't beat that. That's just awesome. Whether you're hiking in the woods or just winding down after a long day, their products bring a little bit of nature right into your home. And the best part? By supporting Apple Valley Natural Soap through the Nature Wanderer, you're also supporting this podcast. Just head to the show notes and click on the link for Apple Valley Natural Soap. So go ahead, treat yourself and the environment to something better. Your skin and Mother Nature will thank you. Hello, friends. Do you love tea and natural wellness products as much as I do? I've partnered with Positively Tea and Positively Botanicals, and I can honestly say I drink their organic loose leaf tea almost every day, and I love it. From organic teas to natural remedies, they offer high-quality products that support a healthy, mindful lifestyle. When you shop through my affiliate link, you not only discover amazing products for yourself, but you also help support the podcast. Visit the link in the show notes to explore their selections today. And for you coffee lovers, they have you covered as well. Treat yourself, support the show, and keep connecting with the natural world.